Good morning, everybody. Shall we start? Thank you. So, yeah, this meeting is being webcast, so just to let you know, we'll start today's meeting with introduction first. I'm Mohammed Iqbal, Councillor from Leeds, and I'll be chairing today's meeting. We'll go on the right here.
Samantha Wilkins, Police and Crime Panel Officer.
Sharon Fraser, Legal Advisor to the Panel from Wakefield Council. Jen Bernardo, Panel Support Officer.
Trevor Lake, Independent Member.
Councillor Sarah Courtney, Colville Council.
Councillor Marin Tennant, King Wakefield Council.
Councillor Simon Sir.
Jo Sykes, Independent Member.
Councillor Sir, Whittaker Caldwell.
Paul Sullivan, Councillor from Bradford. Mark Thompson, Councillor from Kirklees.
Pauline Ellison, Chief Superintendent of Yorkshire Police.
And John Roberts, Chief Constable, West Yorkshire Police.
Alison Owen, Deputy Mayor, Police and Crime.
Alan Rees, Director of Strategy, Communications and Policing, Combined Authority.
Sharon Moore, Engagement Manager, Combined Authority, Police and Crime Team.
Councillor Mr. Downward, Kirk, please.
Thank you. Can I remind everybody to speak up a bit, please, because, you know, sometimes it's difficult to make out what colleagues are saying. So, okay, apologies.
We've had apologies from Councillors Nicole Sharp, Richard Dunbar and Carl Burke.
Richard Dunbar is standing down. He's got another job. So, thank you. Item 2, minutes of the last meeting. Joe?
Mr. Chair.
Okay, second, thank you. Any matters arising? Okay, thank you. No. Any urgent items? There isn't any. Item 4, members' declaration of interests. None. And that takes us on to item 5, which is the HMIC FRS field inspection report.
Thank you very much. Can I just start off by apologising that papers were
were not properly represented for this meeting, so we've sent you the paper that was sent to us by West Yorkshire Police, but all the paper should be from our office. And clearly we've had some personnel changes, and so that was an omission on our side, so I do apologise. We hold the force to account, we hold us to account, so sorry about that. So to start off, this is the results of the peeling inspection that we promised you in December, so you've actually got the peeling inspection report back in December. This is a response to that we told you you were getting. We just thought it would also be good to see the excerpt from the recent state policing report to Tom Windsor, which shows that our law forces that were assessed against the new regime, West Yorkshire is performing particularly well. Not that we want that to excuse us from any improvement that we can possibly make, because obviously we don't set on our own levels and our force, but we thought it was right that we showed the position here in West Yorkshire vis-a-vis Peel, but also celebrate the fact that there has been progress since the last Peel inspection. I'm really happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. After the last town meeting, we met Andy Cook, the inspector. He had nothing but praise for West Yorkshire, so you'll be pleased to know. And can I thank you and the force and Chief Constable for the outstanding work done last year. So we really appreciate and recognise all the hard work that has been put in. We've got several questions. I'll start off with Sarah.
I noticed in the report when you were talking about one of the sort of like areas of companies around children and young people. Oh, sorry. Okay. Normally I don't have a problem with this. Speaking loudly, I'm often told to be more quiet. One of the areas of improvement is around ensuring, or one of the things that we're working on is ensuring about sharing information around information with children's social care organisations around vulnerable children, making sure that a full picture is shared. And I note that there's lots of things that you're putting into place and things that are working around sort of MASH and the PPN system, which all sounds really fantastic. But obviously with one of the precept commitments being to ensure that all decisions and reports on the delivery of the police and crime plan include statements on the impact or benefits for children and young people. So I'd just like to ask if you're satisfied, Alison, that the steps being put into place by the West Yorkshire Police Force since the inspection will address the issues that we're looking, not just in this area, which looks really great, but in sort of like all areas.
Yes, thank you for that question. Clearly we are satisfied that there's an action plan in place and that things are being addressed through the measures outlined in the paper. The evidence that we have that things are improving is obviously Wakefield's good, recent good inspection with outstanding leadership, which obviously includes all those safeguarding MASH arrangements that are described in the paper. Similarly, Leeds has an inspection report that is equally good, and where we've got these very secure MASH arrangements in place and the safeguard arrangements in place, we're able to evidence that through independent inspections from different partners. Obviously that's not the case across the whole of West Yorkshire, but then other matters also come into play there too. From the information that we've got, the assurances we've been given, the additional resources and the clarity around what needs to be done, we feel that there's good evidence being given to us that progress can and will be made. And clearly, the proof of the pudding is in the eating, and we'll keep this on our radar to make sure that promises that are being made are kept.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Joe, do you want to ask a question?
Thank you, Alison. The report focuses on the areas for improvement, but obviously there were a number of areas that were, to a very high standard. We're obviously interested in how you hold the Chief Constable to account around any challenges in terms of maintaining these high levels of achievement for the future.
Yeah, and obviously that was something that I was really keen to see when I was in the chair's position. So we don't just ask about the things that were raised by HMIC as development points. We've got our police and crime plan, which include areas of outstanding performance for West Yorkshire Police that we're also consistently asking questions about. We want to make sure that the great work that has been identified by HMIC FRS continues, and nothing but the best is good for the people of West Yorkshire. So hopefully the Chief Constable will confirm that we do ask those robust questions in the bylaw, the joint executive group, in the community outcomes meeting, which are live streamed, so actually the public can have a look at those meetings and see the kinds of questions that we ask. And there are some areas, such as policing, for example, where we got some really good feedback from HMIC. We had a really long paper at the last community outcomes meeting, a long discussion, all live streamed, where we sought assurances about the continuation of the great work that West Yorkshire has been commended for. But I'm really happy for the Chief Constable to confirm to you that we asked those questions and that he's under no illusion that we're interested in maintaining the great performance as well as bringing up the performance that's been identified as requiring further improvement.
Yeah, so as you discussed before, we take the police and crime plan into a policing strategy for West Yorkshire, and then we have strategic plans across each and every element that we cover an HMIC inspectorate, or everything that the public would expect of us. Irrespective of the very favourable HMIC report, we are absolutely not complacent about anything, and we definitely don't knee-jerk following things across. Those strategic plans are stable, consistent across every area of policing, which we then report on in a regular sequential way through to the Mayor's office with the Deputy Mayor. Again, I can confirm that there is a robust and intrusive holding account about that. But yes, the key element which you're touching on is not to knee-jerk, as some agencies often do, and follow the latest recommendation, but do everything as best as we possibly can, and that's the secret to the success.
Thank you. Follow on from that. Are there any challenges, Alison, that you feel are particularly poignant to maintaining that high standard? I'm sure John's striving for improvement where possible as well.
Yeah, I mean, clearly we're pushing very hard on areas of disproportionality. So this is an area where I'm leading nationally, and I want to be able to look my peers in the eye at the APCC and say the things I'm asking you to do, the things I'm holding you to account for, I'm also doing that back in West Yorkshire. So that's why you had your private briefing in January, the workshop in January looking at race disparities, and I'm very pleased to say that there's a comprehensive report now on the website for West Yorkshire Police highlighting the current positions, open and transparent. So that's clearly an area of interest for me and for the people of West Yorkshire, but also the violence against women and girls agenda is an area of constant pressure that we are asking the right questions, but also seeking to recognise where we're both on the same page, because there are lots of instances where West Yorkshire Police is already 1 or 2 or even 3 steps ahead in terms of work that they're doing in relation to violence against women and girls. So that they're key priorities from our Mayor. Clearly we also looking at the pledges that the Mayor has made and looking at the recruitment of staff achieving 750 over 3 years, but also looking at the recruitment of those officers to make sure that they meet the requirement of this board, which asked us to make sure that the recruitment of a diverse police force was delivered, but also looking at the recruitment of women, but also the experience of women, so looking at misogyny. So in the next bylaw, we've done some, the next JEG in fact, next week, there are questions in there around misogyny, around some of the experiences that we've heard about nationally, and triangulating back here at West Yorkshire to get the assurance that we need. Child Q, I'll talk to you about childcare in my any of the matters at the end, but we're constantly looking to make sure that West Yorkshire can hold its head up high, but that we can demonstrate to the people of West Yorkshire that where there are national issues being emerging, that we're asking those questions on their behalf.
Okay. Sarah, did you want to?
Yeah, just sort of following on from that as well. Obviously, it's great to know that we're all just striving to be good and better and stuff. How much succession planning is there within sort of like from a sort of strategic point of view? Because obviously, just that's an important part of sort of any sort of any size organisation's sort of strategic sort of views and overview and sort of viewpoint really, in terms of making sure that the excellent work that's happening and the sort of progress that's been made is actually sort of planned in all the way through the organisation and doesn't rest just on one or two key individuals. So just some sort of reassurance really that's it.
Yeah, so clearly I'll bring John in at some point to give you the detail of that. But the Mayor and I are satisfied that through the force management statement, for example, there's a real understanding of the need to have a plan in place for those key leadership roles, that we're always working hard and planning to bring in talent where we need to bring that talent in. It's an ongoing piece of work, not just with the uplift, but also with detectives, for example. I've seen adverts out and about asking people to move from forces to West Yorkshire, and also there's a continuous development of police officers to get to the next level, so sergeant to inspector to chief inspector, and that's an ongoing process. And obviously I speak to various people and they talk to me about how they've been supported through various internal processes to achieve promotion. It's often something that causes consternation for councils in particular as police officers move through the ranks, but it's a really important part of growing your own. Of course, John was our own as a police constable and has grown through those ranks, so it's something that we've got the capacity and the knowledge to do, but also the passion to do. That diversity that we've also talked about is clearly part of the rationale, because we have got one of the most diverse, if not the most diverse command teams in the country, as a result of that investment in police constables up to the command team. In terms of all the specialist functions, that's obviously a challenge for all forces, and definitely when you're being told that from your even though you're getting 340 new police officers through uplift, you've got to move 12 experienced officers into ROCU, and you've got to move from HMIC's recommendations, you've got to have further capacity in safeguarding, so you're moving 79 people into safeguarding who are experienced officers. That's always a challenge in terms of understanding what your capacity is and what the needs are going to be. And that's where the force management statement is a really important document for carrying that out. But there is a people directorate which temporary basis the UK Riley leads, and I've obviously met the director at the UK regularly to understand the work that's ongoing to grow and develop the capacity of the internal police officers and staff. So I'm really happy for John to add anything else that he thinks is appropriate. Thank you.
No, I think the Deputy Mayor's comprehensive and detailed answer is an example as to how intrusive she is and how much she
That's why she used the word intrusive.
about my organisation. Just to suffice to say, the success we've seen in some of the areas of the inspection report can't be achieved by individual people alone. It is a holistic, wide, broad depth of experience and knowledge from serious and organised crime to neighbourhood policing to contact management to investigative processes to safeguarding. And not one person can influence all of those, it's a whole organisation response. And yes, we have systems and structures and people in place to develop, grow and nurture people through the organisation for the future.
Brilliant, thank you, that's really reassuring.
Thank you. I think we had a brief discussion earlier on. We are mindful that success of any institute consists of the teamwork and good leadership. and we're grateful that it is there. So through the Deputy Mayor, we want to thank the Chief Constable for the outstanding report from the inspection. Thank you. Any other comments on this item?
Chair,
Sorry?
thank you for the report. It's been very, very good and massive improvement. Just a little bit on protecting our just noticed, you know what.
Will you speak up? I can't hear you.
Sorry. Just on one element of solving crime, make adequate. And I was wondering if there were any plans to do that sort of like recording crime, but then we're not solving it, and the key element is not solving. So perhaps looking at that as a priority at some point.
You've been investigating crime, which is the bedrock of all successes.
Yeah, and clearly this is a national problem. It's linked to the massive under-investment over the years, not just in West Yorkshire, nationally. Detectives, you know, many people don't want to be detectives. It's particularly, you have to have a particular interest in that area of work, and lots of people don't want to do it. So there's been a national challenge trying to find detectives. And I think that when you look at the HMIC list that we included, you'll see that not many people do well in that area at all, and obviously it's an area of growth and development that West Yorkshire Police is focused on, because if we don't, there's no point arresting people if well, you can't arrest them if you don't get the evidence to arrest them. And you know, justice for victims is one of the major parts of our police and crime plan, and you'll see that the metrics that we've put in place in the police and crime plan are about increasing justice for victims right across the board. So investigations are a key part of achieving that. I'm sure John will want to defend the work that he's doing.
No, I won't defend that. I'll explain that those two areas of providing service to victims of crime and investigating crime, you know, just to be really clear, that's about volume and the numbers across a large organisation of any force. In terms of serious and organised and serious crime and the most harmful crimes, we're outstanding. We've got some brilliant investigators and very careful and detailed, complex care of victims. I think those two areas, when you look at it across the country, as you see more reports coming, are as much an indicator of police resourcing, finances and numbers of investigators and police staff as they are as to whether the police know what they're doing. We know what we're doing, we just don't always have the people to do it. And so of course we'll always improve and we'll learn off other people. But it's a very valid point to raise, and it's one that's passionate to all investigators' hearts. But just to reassure, it's not so much that we don't know what we're doing, it's just we don't always have the number of people to do what we need to do to give the service that the public deserve.
Okay, thank you Chief Constable. So we'll conclude on that item, which is item 5. And that takes us on to item 6, which is neighbourhood policing, a report in the past, and I'm sure everybody has read it. Alison, do you want to add anything further?
No, just to do a little introduction. Obviously, here in West Yorkshire Police, we retained audit neighbourhood policing, which many forces did not do. One of the things that we've been praised for by HMI, quite rightly. It's really nice to see that there's co-terminosity between the voices of West Yorkshire. ASB and neighbourhood policing came second in the consultation that we did with public West Yorkshire. So people are passionate about neighbourhood policing. I have been out to visit many neighbourhood policing teams over the last 6 months. I've been blown away by the passion, the commitment, the energy. Yes, the challenges. I've not met a fine bunch of people right across the whole of West Yorkshire working hard every day to keep people safe. And I just want to commend this report to you and answer any questions. I will say that I think there's an error on one of the numbers for PCSOs, but we'll pick that up through the questions and we will be able to answer any of the questions you might have.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. We've got a question from Councillor Sullivan.
Yeah, looking at point 315 on the graph, we've got our areas for MPT attendance, and you'll see that 3 of them are kind of in the same ballpark, and then Kirklees dropped substantially to 50% of attended by MPT. But Bradford falls off a cliff. It's 25%. Now, I know there's always the danger of making a meal out of percentages if the absolute figures are quite low. But Bradford's got 56 incidents and Leeds got 60, so, you know, again, very comparable. Yet they're 70% attendance. So I'm wondering how all that impacts on the safer places and thriving communities, particularly for Bradford.
Yeah, I think this is about COVID-related calls, and not all the incidents will be MPT-related, is that right?
Right.
So it's about the MPT attending the right calls and not attending calls that mean that they are abstracted from doing that neighbourhood policing team work that you will want them to be doing. So actually Bradford is in a really good space because only 25% of COVID-related calls
Right. So
we don't be finding.
it's
So
the
it's
other way around. Right.
Yeah.
So we can 3 cheers for Bradford.
Yeah.
Just tick me up for Colin Bell.
Yeah. Good. That's a very satisfying answer.
Thank you. Any other comments from any colleagues? Councillor Thompson.
It was just a question on the neighbourhood policing staffing. From the table, it looks like we're 79 down on expectation as far as the staffing in that in neighbourhood policing. I'd just like to know what is being done in reference to try to catch that figure up, because I know for the fact that any number that starts as a minus is always a real challenge to get back to zero and then get back on target. So I'd just like to know what's happening.
Okay,
Sorry, because it is our fault. The number of PCSOs in there shows 603. That's what the number has been for the last few years. And it's wholly our fault. We provided incorrect data on this occasion through a mistake to the Mayor's office. The budgetary position is 565, and we have 565 PCSOs. So the good news is actually there aren't establishments. The amount of allocated PCSOs to the neighbourhood policing teams is there. But the challenge is still there, that in terms of constables and other ranks, there's still not as many as we would want to have in place there. It's a really fine balance going forward, and the deputy and the local police and ACC are all over it to make sure they get the right people into neighbourhood policing at the right time. So it's about the increase in resources through the Uplift programme, getting trained, getting online and then moving out. We've also got some challenges in a similar way within safeguarding as well. So it is the operational dilemmas that we have to try and balance where the best equipped resources are. So we are definitely and absolutely committed to getting to the numbers. We've just got to do it carefully to make sure that another part of the organisation doesn't get disrupted. It's great to have all of the new recruits, but by their very nature they are still new recruits, and most of them are still in training.
But the good news is that it says budgeted, so the money's there. It isn't about the money. The money is there. It's just getting them through onto somewhere.
So the deficit in the numbers, the budgeting for the salaries is some of that being used for overtime, so it's not as much of a deficit on the streets.
They can do, if you want to allow me to answer, they can do, but actually in reality they usually recruited them for a training school. So they're still coming through the rings. But yes, we do then be able to release money for proactive initiatives and to give more problems on it.
Just in addition to that, there's around 113 additional officers and staff that will work in other neighbourhood areas, supporting neighbourhood teams, for example, safe school officers and social behaviour officers, hate crime coordinators and the like. So whilst this is our core neighbourhood offer, there are a number of other officers and staff that also do contribute very strongly towards our neighbourhood offer.
And I think that we've spoken about the PEQF before, and yes, it's definitely got merits, the police education quality framework, it's definitely got merits. It's also got disbenefits in that the length of time it takes to get people on the front line is ridiculous. 3 years in some cases, 2 years in others, and also it means that perfectly acceptable, in fact sometimes outstanding potential candidates who don't have a degree and don't want to go through the PEQF because they might already be on 40 grand doing something else that we really would like to utilise in policing, won't come into policing on that basis. So we feedback to the Home Office about PQS where can we have that as well as the old system, so that we can have that blended approach.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions on this paper? Can I just say on behalf of the panel that we are very supportive of the NPT model, and I really feel that's a very successful model, and we continue to support that, and so thank you for that. Item 7, do you want to introduce the paper?
Yes, antisocial behaviour is obviously it's regularly reported to this panel, it's regularly discussed with the Chief Constable. The paper highlights some changes to the way that antisocial behaviour is being recorded as a result of feedback from HMIC, which is having an impact on recording crime, because as we're recording less incidents as ASB and more as crime, that will have an impact on the figures. But it's definitely a better outcome for the public of West Yorkshire, rather than going into an antisocial behaviour pathway that their incidents are dealt with as the crimes that they actually are. So I'm really happy to answer any questions you might have. Commend the paper to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, we have a few questions. We'll start off with Councillor Morley King.
Thank you. Hello, Alison. Are you confident that the true picture of the antisocial behaviour is not masked by these recording changes?
So I'm not confident at the moment that we've got a true picture, because we're in the midst of the transition from the old arrangement to the new arrangement, and so we will get to a position of settling into what is the true picture. Am I confident that the victims are getting a better service? Yes, I am, because you and I both know that once you go into the antisocial behaviour pathway, that's partners, that's local authority led, and often the public are frustrated about that, and they want action taken by the police to stop the action, to stop the harassment behaviour that they're having to deal with sometimes on a daily basis. I've been a local councillor for over 30 years, as you know, and many times my constituents would complain about being in the antisocial behaviour pathway, which could take many months and sometimes years. So I think that in terms of being able to compare and contrast antisocial behaviour data, it's a problem for you and for me and even for the police, but it's actually better for the public that this is happening, and we will get to a position where we know actually what is ASB and what is other crime.
So that leads me on to the next question, thank you. So when do you think it's going to settle down and show the true picture?
I mean, I'll bring in the Chief Constable to be as specific as possible. I mean, who can say, I mean, I expect really between 12 and 24 months that we should be getting better quality data through at that point, and we'll be able to start to contrast and compare data and come to some decision about what it's actually telling us. Clearly, we also need to be working in partnership with the local antisocial behaviour, the LASBACs, I know it's LASBAC news because I've done a lot of work with them. So we'll need to work with our partners in local authorities to understand what the impact is on them and whether they're seeing more or less. But I think 12 to 24 months is not an unreasonable time frame. Is that right?
Yeah, no, it is. And I suppose just the important thing to note is that more of this, the same data is going to be recorded, but more of them will be recorded as crimes rather than just being left on an incident system. So it's just the way in which it's being recorded. So as we've done on many occasions over the last 10 years in West Yorkshire, we're putting on crime levels, but for the right reasons, so we can see exactly what's being recorded, where, and how we deal with it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Trevor Lake, did you want to ask a question?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It's probably on the same vein, really. It's about the ASB figures that we're going to be using as a measurement. So 2.9, just want to make sure I've got my head around this. What we're saying is that the key measurement will be, the year we're measuring against will be 21, 22, April 22. sorry, 2.9 of your coverage.
Oh, yeah.
Cover, your
That's
coverage.
it,
Yeah.
yes, but
I think it's
obviously,
like, in the light of what you just said, we
obviously
don't.
we'll cleanse the data. Once we've got to a position of understanding what the new arrangements mean, we'll be able to cleanse the data to come up with a figure that makes sense. So it's about understanding the trend, isn't it? So we'll be able to give you that information. So yeah, 21, 22 is definitely baseline.
So that'll be to the end of April 22, will it?
Yeah, I think if we had that data, because I think we've only just, I think we'll do it from the end of March 31st, 22, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Sophie, did you want to ask any further clarification?
Sorry.
Sorry, okay. I've got Sophie down, yeah. Sorry.
Thanks, Chair. I've got a couple of questions. My first one's on the antisocial behaviour legislation and the orders. My experience is, as we know, antisocial behaviour can be civil and criminal, multifaceted in that sense. And often there's not an explicit animal, but there's a lot of people pointing that, from the local authority and from the police and each other, so you should exercise your power on this to issue these kind of orders. So my question is, how is it established who does it? And my second question is about the community trigger. Now, I only learned about this, I think, last year when actually a resident brought it to my attention. And I've been a councillor for nearly 6 years now, and I've been looking about it. And it does say that it's an active multi-agency review of the case. So how is that different to the multi-agency approach that's usually done on social care?
So on the powers and who decides who does what, that's an operational decision, and obviously I'll then defer to the Chief Constable to answer that question.
So there's two elements, yes, within the antisocial behaviour team where they exist. There's a joint multi-agency approach about sharing data and establishing who's going to do what. So it shouldn't really be that pointed away, but of course operation on both sides. But people are under pressure. They do kind of say, well, we've tried our bit, and somebody else can do their bit. And then within that same environment, through the local authorities, that community trigger can be instigated by members of the public and complaints coming through to trigger action and activity. So it's really a flagging system to ensure that there's a sort of legislative responsibility to make something happen. But again, sadly, a lot of the orders are the right thing to do, but they're where there are criminality, and then they become civil orders, and that's where the difficulty comes, in the same way that primarily we're involved in criminal activity and criminal conviction of investigations, and civil is another. But we all know in this room that the success is a strong partnership and an agreed, coherent partnership, but both, and because I suppose the partnership goes beyond policing and local authorities, it's with communities, it's with businesses, it's with housing organisations, it's with any other arms out management companies. But again, everybody's been under the same financial pressures, and that's often where it gets them a little bit. So, long answer, but yeah, there is that antisocial coordination meeting by ward and by district and by area that instigates the triggers that should happen.
Can I just ask some clarity, Chair? So how is that different to how operationally to how things are done usually? If everyone's working in partnership already, then how would a community trigger be different from that way of working?
Because I think there's something for dissatisfied members of the public and councillors or communities or people to hang it on to say there's actually a legislative requirement to do something.
I could say that there is some conversation happening in the Home Office about their interpretation of community triggers, because obviously we want to prevent vexatious requests, because it could be that you're continuously in a process of community trigger, and so we ask for some clarity, not just us, most forces and businesses have asked for clarity around when a community trigger can happen and when it can't. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments on this paper? Okay, thank you. We'll move on to item 8, which is Mayor's response to any current issues.
Yeah, thank you very much. So just a couple of items, some bigger than others. NHAS, just wanted to keep you all in the loop in that, we gave notice, 12 months notice to end our leadership of the NHAS arrangement. That 12 months notice period is upon us. However, we've not been able to, the board have not been able to secure a new force to lift and shift NPAS as we hoped would be the case. And so we're now expecting a request to come to the Mayor to ask us to extend the notice period. I should also say that there is some difficulty in just abandoning NPAS. Some of those difficulties are legal and the interpretation of Section 22, which determines how that arrangement works, but also from a moral perspective, we need to make sure that all those staff have got one job to do, and that's keeping NPAS afloat and making sure that we're providing the best service for the 43 forces that we serve. And so we are expecting a request, and we will consider that when it arrives. And just to say that we've just had an NPAS board meeting, and there's been an authority from the board to open the options for next steps beyond just looking at shift arrangements, potentially looking at a plan B. So hopefully, even if we do extend, which I can't say yet if we haven't had the request, it might end up that there's another option on the table, which I will keep informed.
Okay.
Any questions on that?
Any questions? Trevor?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I mean, it's a difficult situation to deal with, historically, taken on board by West Yorkshire Police for the right reasons at the time. But clearly, it's a pretty high rated risk to the organisation. So, obviously, the sooner it can be resolved, and I'm sure you're wanting that to happen, then the better it is for everybody concerned.
Yeah, and obviously I was on the police authority when we agreed. I think were you there as well? You right?
Yeah.
Yes, we were both there. Main culture, as they say. So yeah, we've obviously got a responsibility to make sure that things are done in a timely way, and you can believe me when I say we're doing everything we possibly can to bring this to a satisfactory conclusion for West Yorkshire, which is why we gave notice in the first place. Yeah. We recognise that it's not business as usual for us in our new world. We are working hard to get to that position. The other thing I wanted to tell you about was the national BORG strategy from the National Police Chiefs Council was published in December, and the performance framework was published earlier this week. So I just wanted you to be aware of that. The force here have also developed their own sister BORG strategy that speaks to the national board, which is being developed with partners, and also the Association of Police and Crime Commissioners have also published their BORG strategy, which I was heavily involved in, to ensure that PCCs are empowered and supported and resourced to hold their forces to account for the delivery of effective responses to violence against women and girls. So I just thought you'd be interested in that, and if you want to look on the NPCC's website, you'll see both the original strategy and then the performance framework, and NPCC similarly, their strategy is out. Any questions on that? And just to continue in relation to the APCC work that I'm doing, I've just been invited by the IOPC, Independent Office of Police Complaints, to also join the race disparities panel that they're establishing to also understand how the IOPC can empower helping and supporting forces to address race disparities. So I'm looking forward to getting some work done there. The child queue, so as soon as child queue was published and we all knew about it, the Mayor requested some urgent information from the Chief Constable about could this happen here in West Yorkshire, and also it was featured in the next bylaw, which was within a week. Where we had an update from Lisa on detail. She's now sent me a form of words because the numbers are so small in West Yorkshire. we don't want to inadvertently breach any confidentiality. So I've got a form of words that I'm allowed to read to ensure that no confidentiality is breached. So strip searches as part of stop and search have two categories. A more thorough search, one that involves the removal of more than an outer coat, jacket or gloves, and this can take place out of public view, for example in the back of the police van, or a search that involves the exposure of intimate body parts. This must be completed at a nearby police station or other location out of public view. In the period last 12 months, there were 15 strip searches conducted. None of those searches were under 15 and none were female. 10 identified as white and 5 as Asian. Current data recording does not differentiate between a more thorough search or a search where intimate body parts are exposed, and this is being addressed. So that's something picking up on the points where we will be getting assurance that recording has improved. 8 of the searches had the location recorded as other, e.g. not at a nearby police station. These were subject to a deep dive. All 8 stop search reports were in relation to controlled substances under Section 23 Misuse of Drugs Act. 3 of the 8 did sample led to items being located. 6 of the 8 were conducted at a nearby police station, but just poorly recorded, and the other 2 almost certainly were at police station from the information available in the logs that were dip sampled, but we can't categorically say. This too is being addressed, so that if other is selected, the location needs to be free text recorded. So again, that's leading to some improvements in practice. An appropriate adult was contacted in every case and present during 7 out of the 8 searches. Again, further data field is being created to better capture this information. No intimate searches, that is a search of an orifice other than the mouth, were conducted on juveniles. Professional standards have received no public complaints relating to strip searching of juveniles. Safer Schools officers have been surveyed and none report that they have conducted or been asked to conduct a strip search of a juvenile. The stop and search policy has been reviewed and complies with the College of Police and NPP. Reminders have been sent out to all staff through briefings. We will further review the recommendations within Child Q, CSPR and adopt any further learning. So hopefully that gives you some reassurance that we're on it, and practice here in West Yorkshire is not similar to practice elsewhere, I'll say that. Other things I just wanted to tell you about, 2 pieces of good news, BRU funding. So we have been given permission to bid for BRU funding for a 3-year period. Hallelujah. So rather than the 1 year, which has just been ridiculous because it means you just start setting things up and then you're winding things down. We've been given permission to put bid for a 3-year funding period. And the amount that is being indicated in the papers from the Home Office is up to 15 million, just under 15 million over that 3-year period. So if we are successful in achieving that money, that will be a massive resource for West Yorkshire, and it will enable us to continue some great work, but also initiate some brilliant new projects around service violence. Violence against women and girls is being written into the bid. In fact, it's probably gone already, knowing Jackie Marsh and how quick she is, and it's been written into the bid as a key area of concern in this period in West Yorkshire. So we will be able to commission more work around women and girls as a consequence of this bid, should it be successful, which we have no reason to believe it won't. So that's great news. And then finally, just wanted to say that I have been invited to become patron of Bradford at Night. So the Bradford Business Improvement District wanted to both improve the experience of people visiting Bradford on a night. Obviously, they want to improve the numbers coming into Bradford because they've all been very badly hit by COVID, but also it's a partnership with the Mayor's Office, with the CSPs and other partners, including policing, to then put measures in place to make Bradford a safe night out for all beneficiaries. So they've got things like Angela, for example, the training of all the bar staff around vulnerability and safeguarding. They've got volunteer street angels, and the bar's also put together for street marshals. So some brilliant work happening in Bradford. I'm very delighted that they asked me to be the patron of the Bradford at Night initiative, and I look forward to seeing you all in Bradford enjoying your night like that. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. That was very touching. That's all the work you're doing to improve the service, and so much work going on. Thank you for briefing us. Any other comments?
Just a really quick question. So on the VRU funding, that's great news. Is that 15 million? And I'm guessing that it's not, but is it 15 million a year? Or is it 15 million for 3 years? 5.8
million, 4.8 million, 4.3 million.
Yeah, that's just, it's always fascinating.
It's considerable growth because even in the first year when we had the most money, that was 4.8 million, so it's $1 million up on the best year. And then the second year matches the best year, and then we go down to 4.3 million, which actually won't be a problem because then we start to disinvest and moving on to hopefully business as usual, because some of this work, hopefully, if it's proven to be efficacious, will be embedded into some of our ongoing practices of business as usual.
And does that mean then that organisations will be able to apply for funding for 3 years rather than 1 year funding as well? Because we give the grant money out as grants, don't we? Is that right?
Yes.
Yes.
So, probably not, but possibly 2 years, because after year one, or at the end of the approaching year one, the Home Office is requiring evidence of the efficacy of intervention A or B. So it could be that some of those programmes don't meet the standard, and so we can't hold them. But notwithstanding that process, we're hoping that we will be able to continue to fund some programmes for 2 and maybe even more years.
Okay, brilliant, thank you.
Thank you. So we'll be getting 3 million more than our usual yearly request.
Yeah, but it's the fact that it's a 3-year deal, it's just unbelievable. And also the MOJ, actually we sent the MOJ money, we've just been told that's also going to be a 3-year deal. So they've listened to our pleas, not just here in West Yorkshire, but nationally. We can do some really good money, but we know that the money's there for a long period of time.
Yeah, so it's planning.
Yeah. And also our partners who have got really brilliant, for example, the ISBAs and the IGBAs, every year they're all going to retire, resigning and going off somewhere else because the money's coming to an end, so we'll be able to retain that knowledge and expertise.
And it's a sign of continuity as well on college.
And it's an investment. It's an investment in those services, which is great.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Oh, any other comments on this item? Okay. Item 9, publish key decisions. You've seen the paper for the information. Trevor, did you want to dwell on that a bit for more clarification?
Yes, thanks, Chair. It was just positive futures. I think I've clarified now that the decision is to extend the funding whilst you evaluate that, which is one of many initiatives you've got going. I think. Have I got that right?
You've got that right.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay. Any other comments?
And just on that, on these sort of initiatives, whether it's sort of possible at some point in the future to have, maybe a short presentation or some information about some of the good work that's come out of these things. That would be really interesting and useful, and as ward councillors, it would be really useful to be able to then feed back to people, what good work's doing, good work is being done with that money.
That's a brilliant idea. So Julia Clough does do that piece of work for various partners, so we can get her to do a report and a presentation if you'd like. But also, obviously, Sharon and her team are responsible for all safe communities funding. So maybe do a joint paper talking about the monies that we're expending, the commissioning that we're doing, the brilliant benefits that that's bringing to West Yorkshire. Thank you for letting us do that.
Thank you. Item 10, which is agreed actions log, paper attached for information. Okay, we're okay on that. Item 11, which is forward agenda. We've got the dates for next meetings, which is this is the last meeting for this year. And the next meeting will be on 10th of June, which will be AGM and information of panel members and etc. And yeah, so that will be on 10th of June, which is forward plan item 11, and then that takes us on to item 12, complaints received by the panel. So far, there's not been any complaints, but Trevor, do you want to ask for some clarification in terms of whether the public has enough information as to, as much as we are pleased that there's no complaints, but we want to make sure that there is information out there for public to make complaints. But Trevor, do you want to clarify on the ethics committee?
Yes, thanks, Chair. It was really just, without wanting the panel to get involved in details around enforcement, which I know comes through various other mechanisms, it was just going forward how you will be comfortable yourself to be assured that they are being shared, and whether there was any benefit in the panel getting some sort of trend analysis. And there's a huge amount of work goes on, particularly with PSD, some excellent reporting evidence, some excellent feedback that currently goes through the equality, joint independent equality group that I chair. And it's just going forward as to whether there was any benefit of some of the trends of those complaints being coming forward to this forum. Not the detail, just the trends.
Yeah, so I think when Karen Ray was here at the last meeting, she did say some of the problems in the past have been that the IT didn't have keywords, and that sometimes it's really so they'd have to go through a case manually. But I think we're buying some new software, and we made a commitment that as soon as we can get that information, really happy to give you that trend analysis. And because she reports annually, by the time next year comes up, I'm sure that information will be really happy to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And before we go, can I just say to those who won't be here next year, because I know that people move on and do different things, it's been lovely to work with you all, and can I particularly say how lovely it's been to work with Richard, and I'm so sorry that it's leaving. I know we're doing greater things, but still, it's been lovely to work with.
Yeah, there's a few panel members leaving. Jackie's standing down, she's not here. Richard's not here, sent apologies, and all those candidates who are up for elections, you know, we wish them
I hope to see you next year.
successful. Yeah. We were informed by some that there are complaints, but they're not panels reading, you know.
All right, okay.
Yeah,
Well, that's
there
nice.
are some complaints, but
None of us
not
is
for
perfect.
which is, but because we're used to having a lot of complaints, you know, with the previous system, you know, every year we had a complaint subcommittee which Joe was chairing, and we were quite taken aback that there's no complaints. Okay, any other business? No? Look forward to see you again, no? Yeah?
Yeah, and good luck to those who are up for election.
And early finish again, you know, Mrs. Allison, straight to the front.